The Shadow and the Wrench, inside the $62 million secret of a forgotten father.
Screaming as my mother called me screaming as a 30.
He was standing at the parts counter of his own garage, oil under his nails, a smear of grease across one knuckle, when his granddaughter Charlie slid her phone across the counter without a word.
On the screen was a photograph. Cream cardstock. Gold foil.
The Holloway family warmly invites you to celebrate the graduation of Cameron Holloway. A guest list of 90 names. Senator's aides.
Two surgeons from Brett's hospital. An interior design magazine editor Melissa had been chasing for a year. Frank read it twice.
He was not on it. He was not on the list for his own grandson's graduation party, in a house whose down payment had come 11 years ago.
From a wire transfer Frank had sent and then asked his lawyer to scrub from memory so the boy would think he'd done it himself.
Maybe it's a mistake, Pop, Charlie said.
She was 19, in a Holloway & Son coverall 2 sizes too big, and she was the only person in 3 generations of his family who still called him that.
Maybe Mom forgot to. Your mother doesn't forget, Frank said quietly. Forgetting is messy.
Your mother is the most organized person I have ever met. He handed the phone back.
He did not let his face change, because a man learns, after 71 years, that the face is the last fortress to fall and you do not hand it over for free.
2 days later, Mother called me screaming because something moved in his chest low and so heartbreaking.
He knew its weight, and this wasn't it. This was the other thing. The thing that has no tears in it.
If you have ever been made small by people who owed you everything, you already know the feeling.
You already know that it does not stay small. It sits in you and it grows teeth, and it waits. Frank Holloway was a patient man.
He could afford to be. He owned more than the entire guest list combined, and not a single one of them knew it.
This is the story of the night they all found out. Vos veo. You came. Sit, get comfortable.
I am Dona Cláudia, and tonight this story belongs to me to tell and to you to hear.
But tell me first, Meu Bame, where did you hear about old Frank Holloway? Someone must have pointed you up my street.
No matter, let me put the coffee on. We have a long night ahead of us, the two of us.
It would be easy to say Frank was a simple man, but that was the lie his son and his daughter-in-law had built their whole lives around, and lies like that have a way of becoming load-bearing.
Frank let them believe it. He had his reasons. He'd had them for 40 years.
What was true, he drove a 1994 Ford pickup the color of dried mud.
2 days I replied and walked away 2 days later. My mother was scaring to eat lunch because 30th lunchbox lay I fell in her head packed for, and one year they unpacked herself the same.
He wore the same brand of work boots he'd worn since he was 22.
His house, the little brick one on Delancey Street, had the same kitchen linoleum it had had since the Carter administration.
What was also true, and what nobody on Maple Hill suspected, Frank Holloway was the founder, chairman, and majority shareholder of Holloway Industries, the third largest independent manufacturer of automotive components in the country.
He held 41 patents. He owned the 11-acre industrial parcel out on Route 9 outright.
And a quiet portfolio of commercial buildings across 3 states.
And, though even his lawyer flinched when they discussed it, a controlling interest in a regional lender called Apex Financial,
which he had bought during the crash of 2009 for reasons that, 11 years later, were about to become extremely relevant.
His net worth, on the morning the invitation arrived, was a little over $62 million.
He had hidden it the way other men hide an affair. Carefully. Expensively. On purpose. Eleanor had understood.
You watched your daddy ruin your brother with money, she'd said once, the two of them on the porch.
You're afraid you'll do the same to Brett. I'm not afraid, he'd said. I'm certain.
2 days later, Mother called me screaming because 30 minutes beat me. I beat everyone.
He earns it or he learns why people who don't earn it lose it. That was the plan.
A trust, structured so that Brett would inherit real wealth only if he built something of his own first, only if, by 40, he demonstrated he could create value rather than just spend it.
Frank had told Brett the trust existed. He had never told him how much was in it, or that the lock on the door was Brett's own character.
Brett, it turned out, had spent 20 years failing the test without ever knowing he was taking it.
Now the door at the graduation party had a velvet rope and a checklist, and Frank Holloway's name was not on it.
And the man who had quietly underwritten half his son's life was.
In his daughter-in-law's exact words. Words Frank would later play back for a room full of people in $7,000 dresses. A bit of an embarrassment.
Honestly. Have you seen his hands? Frank drove out to the house anyway. Not to crash the party.
He told himself he just wanted to see his grandson hand him the watch.
Eleanor's father's watch, a 1948 Hamilton, the only thing of real sentimental value Frank had ever owned that you could fit in a pocket.
He'd polished it that morning at the garage bench, and Charlie had watched him do it, and she hadn't said anything, but her jaw had gone tight in a way that reminded him, painfully, of Eleanor.
Days later, my mother was screaming because 30 parked the rest Ford pickup 3 doors onto.
The house was lit like a film set. Valets. A string quartet on the lawn. A catering tent the size of his first apartment.
Through the tall windows he could see Melissa moving through the crowd in pale blue silk, laughing the bright brittle laugh she used on people she needed something from.
Brett stood by the bar in a blazer that probably cost more than the engine Frank had rebuilt that week, telling a story with his hands, the surgeon's hands, the clean hands. Frank got as far as the front step.
Melissa intercepted him there, on the welcome mat, with the smooth speed of a woman who'd been watching the driveway.
Up close her smile didn't reach anything. Frank. Not Dad. Never Dad. I didn't realize you were. Is everything all right?
I came to see Cameron. Brought him something. He lifted the small box. That's so thoughtful. Her eyes flicked to it, to his hands, away.
It's just, tonight is a very particular crowd, you understand. Brett's chief of surgery is here. Some people from the magazine.
It's important for the children that the family present a certain, she searched for the word as if it were a wine she was selecting, a certain image.
You understand. I understand the words you're saying. Don't be difficult. The smile tightened. You'd be uncomfortable. You always are.
You'd stand by the food and not talk to anyone, and frankly, Frank, people ask questions about who you are.
And the answer is a little. She gestured vaguely at all of him, the boots, the hands, the truck 3 doors down, a little hard to dress up.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because at 30 behind her, a woman in pearls drifted close and stage whispered.
That was the moment. If you're keeping a ledger, and Frank was, he'd kept ledgers his whole life, that was the entry.
Is that the gardener? The laugh. The not correcting. Frank looked past Melissa, into the bright house.
And found Cameron for 1 second through the glass, a tall boy in a graduation sash.
Looking back at his grandfather on the step with an expression Frank couldn't read and wouldn't understand for another 2 months.
Then the door eased shut, gently, the way you close a door on something you've decided isn't yours to deal with.
Frank stood on the mat a moment. Then he put the little box back in his jacket, walked to the weather-beaten truck.
And drove home to the brick house on Delancey Street, where he opened a closet, moved a false panel his own hands had built,
and knelt in front of a safe that held the receipts of a secret life. He spun the dial. Eleanor's birthday. It still opened on her birthday.
Inside, deeds. Patents. A trust agreement 90 pages long.
And a single sheet of paper, brought to him that very morning by a worried man named Raymond Stern, that he had not yet let himself fully read.
He read it now. And the slow, heavy door in his chest, the one that had been swinging shut all evening, clicked into the frame and locked.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the third tea, you are quit, Mubem.
There is water too if the night is warm where you are sitting. Still with me. Then Dona Cláudia goes on.
It gets darker before the dawn, these stories always do. The paper was a loan summary from Apex Financial.
It described a credit facility of $3 million.
Secured against the 11-acre industrial parcel on Route 9, the land under Holloway Industries.
The land Frank had bought with his first real profits in 1981 and never once mortgaged.
Because Eleanor had made him promise that whatever else they risked, they would never risk the ground they stood on.
The borrower of record was a company called Maison Melly LLC, Melissa's design firm.
The guarantor, the person pledging Frank's land as collateral, the person whose signature made the whole thing legal, was Frank Holloway. Frank had never signed it.
He held the page up to the kitchen light and looked at the signature the way you'd look at a photograph of a stranger wearing your face.
It was good. It was very good. Someone had practiced. The F had his particular hard downstroke, the looping H was nearly right.
Someone who had access to his signature, on birthday cards, on the co-signed lease for Cameron's first apartment.
2 days later, my mother calls me, small documents address family that radiant.
And used it to put a noose around the only piece of earth his dead wife had asked him to protect. He sat down at the kitchen table.
The linoleum from the Carter administration was cold under his socks.
Here is what a lesser man would have done, and what Melissa was counting on him doing, nothing. Notice nothing.
Be the simple old gardener, who didn't read the documents, and couldn't have understood them if he had.
The whole scheme depended on Frank Holloway being exactly as small as they decided he was. Here is what Frank did instead.
He picked up the phone, the landline, the one with the curled cord, and he called Raymond Stern, his lawyer of 34 years, and he said 5 words.
Raymond, don't stop it yet. There was a long silence on the line. Frank, Raymond said carefully, that's forgery.
That's a federal crime. The second you walk into Apex and show them that signature isn't yours, the loan is void and your land is safe.
We do that Monday morning. We do that and it's over. And then what happens to her? To Melissa? Nothing, probably.
She unwinds it, blames a paralegal, cries. Maybe a slap.
People like Melissa don't go to prison for the first lie, Frank. They go to prison for the lie they tell after they think they got away with the first one.
Then my mother called 2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the 30 Frank looked at that at the truck window. That's just like,
Then we let her get away with it, he said. For a little while. We let her think she won.
People show you everything they are, Raymond, in the hour they think they've won. He turned the forged page over so he didn't have to look at the false signature anymore.
I don't want to stop a crime. I want to stop a pattern. And a pattern you only catch in the open.
Frank, I have known you since you were a younger and slightly less terrifying man, and I have to ask.
This isn't about the land anymore, is it? Frank was quiet for a moment. Eleanor asked me to protect that ground, he said finally.
I'm going to protect it so completely that no one ever forgets what happened to the people who came after it. He closed his eyes.
Find out everything. Where the $3 million is going. Who else is in it? I want the whole shape of it before I move.
And if the whole shape of it is worse than forgery?
Then, Frank said, the party they didn't invite me to is going to look small compared to the one I'm going to throw.
It took Raymond Stern 11 days to map the thing, and what he found was worse than forgery, the way a sinkhole is worse than a pothole, same hole, different floor underneath.
They met at the garage, after hours, because Frank trusted the garage more than he trusted any conference room.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the third Raymond spread the papers on the works and said,
It's been dead for 2 years. They just kept the lights on.
Melissa's been funding the firm's losses with personal debt, credit lines, a second mortgage on the Maple Hill house, a loan against Brett's retirement that I'm fairly sure Brett doesn't know about.
Frank's eyebrow moved a quarter inch. Brett doesn't know.
Brett, as far as I can tell, knows that money is tight, and has decided the solution is to host a more expensive party.
Your son is not the architect here, Frank. He's the front.
Handsome, credentialed, trusts his wife completely, signs what she puts in front of him.
Which, Raymond tapped the forged guarantee, is exactly how she got your signature, by the way. She didn't break into your house.
She had Brett bring you a stack of insurance forms at Thanksgiving and you signed the top 3 and never saw the 4th.
Frank remembered. The boy had seemed almost shy about it. Just some paperwork for the family policy, Dad.
Frank had signed at the kitchen table while the turkey rested. He'd been glad, actually, that his son had come to him for something.
He breathed out slowly through his nose. Keep going. The $3 million from Apex isn't to save the firm. The firm's not savable and Melissa knows it.
2 days later, Mama calls Raymond because the $30 million is bait. Raymond pulled LLC folder prospectus and Pulsicor.
She's rebranding. Burning Maison Melly to the ground and rising from the ashes as a luxury design and development fund. The graduation party was the soft launch.
The real event is in 3 weeks, a gala, 200 guests, and a dozen genuinely serious investors she's been courting. Old money.
A sovereign-adjacent family office out of the Gulf. A tech couple worth 9 figures. And the $3 million?
Shows up in the company account the week before the gala. Makes Meridian look funded. Solvent. Real.
She'll stand up in front of those investors and show them a balance sheet with $3 million of fresh capital on it, and she'll raise 30, maybe 40.
And the $3 million that made it all look real, Raymond's voice flattened, is your land, Frank.
When Meridian defaults, and it will, because there's no business under it, Apex forecloses. On Route 9. On Holloway Industries.
On the ground Eleanor made you promise to keep. For a long moment the only sound in the garage was the tick of the cooling space heater.
There's one more thing, Raymond said. And you're not going to like it. He laid down a final page. The man structuring her deal.
The one who introduced her to half those investors and arranged the Apex facility. Trevor Maddox. I don't know him. You don't.
But he knows your land is the collateral, and Frank, he's not trying to help Melissa build anything. Maddox does loan to own.
2 days later, my mother comes screaming. He stretched is designed to fail her.
He's the spider and she thinks she's the spider and she's the fly. Raymond shook his head, almost admiring.
She forged your name to steal your land. And the man she trusts to spend it is planning to take it from her the second it's hers. Frank stood very still.
Then, for the first time in 11 days, something happened to his face that anyone who knew him would have found alarming. He smiled.
Raymond, he said, how would you feel about the 2 of us buying a little more of Apex Financial? Quietly. This week.
Raymond looked at him for a long moment. Then he started laughing, a tired disbelieving laugh, and pulled out his pen. You magnificent old reptile, he said.
You're going to let them put the noose around their own necks and then you're going to own the rope. I already own the rope, Frank said.
I just want to own the trapdoor too. Poise. Now you see why old Dona Cláudia could not sleep, the first time this part was told to her.
No, do not get up for more coffee, I will pour it myself, sit. And who was it, again, that told you Frank was a simple man?
Whoever it was, Querido, they lied to you the same as they lied to him.
Frank went to see Melissa at her studio because a man who is laying a trap needs to know exactly how his prey moves.
And because, though he would not have admitted this to Raymond, some stubborn fatherly part of him wanted to give her one last clean chance to be better than she was.
She gave her mother a screaming gift card.
The new studio occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse downtown. All white walls and brass fixtures, and the particular silence of a place where everything is expensive and nothing is paid for.
Melissa kept him waiting 20 minutes in a lobby with no chairs.
When she finally swept out, Brett was with her, and so was a tall man in a charcoal suit whose handshake felt like a sales close.
Trevor Maddox, the man said. I've heard so much about you, Mr. Holloway. Have you? Frank said. All of it true?
Maddox laughed the way men laugh at things they intend to forget. I hear you're handy. We love a craftsman.
Frank let himself be exactly what they expected. He shuffled a little. He looked too long at the artwork.
He asked a dumb question about the espresso machine.
He watched Melissa relax by degrees as he performed his own smallness for her, and he filed away every flicker of contempt that crossed her face like a man counting cards.
Dad, Brett said, and at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. We wanted to clear the air. About the party. It wasn't personal.
It felt a little personal, son. It was a business event, Melissa cut in, smooth as the brass. These things have a tone. You'd have been bored.
Honestly, we were protecting you. She picked up an envelope from the reception desk and pressed it into his hands with both of hers, warmly, the way you'd give to a charity you didn't really care about.
Her mother wonders 2 days later my mother called me screaming because of 30.
Go treat yourself to something for the shop. Frank looked down at the envelope. $50.
From a woman standing on $3 million of his stolen land, in a studio his money would shortly own, handing him a gift card to the hardware store as though throwing a coin to a man on a corner.
In his jacket pocket, a small recorder he'd bought at that very hardware store turned silently, drinking it all in.
That's generous, Frank said. We're family, Melissa said. And then?
Because some people cannot resist narrating their own cleverness when they've decided the audience is too dim to follow.
She said the thing that would, 3 weeks later, be played through the speakers of a ballroom into the silence of 200 held breaths. You know what your problem is, Frank?
You've spent your whole life with your hands in an engine because you don't understand that the real money, is in making people believe.
Brett's father, the mechanic. She smiled, delighted with herself. By the time I'm done, no one will even remember that's what you were.
We're building something that erases all of that. You're not an embarrassment, Frank. You're just finished. You had your little life.
Let us have ours. Beside her, Maddox watched Frank with the patient, measuring eyes of a man who took companies apart for a living.
Brett looked at the floor. Frank put the envelope carefully in his breast pocket, over his heart, like it meant something.
Screaming because exactly.
He drove the mud-colored truck home and played the recording back once, in the dark driveway, just to be sure he had it.
The real money is in making people believe. He sat there a while.
Then he took the $50 gift card out of the envelope and put it in the safe on Delancey Street, behind the deeds and the patents and the 90-page trust, where he kept the things he never intended to lose.
The one good thing in the whole rotten business was named Charlotte, and she was the only one who didn't know there was a business at all.
Charlie Holloway was Brett and Melissa's daughter, which by every law of inheritance should have made her insufferable.
And instead, through some genetic accident that skipped a generation and landed squarely on her grandfather, had made her the kind of 19-year-old who could diagnose a misfiring cylinder by
ear and who spent her weekends at Holloway and Sun Auto not because anyone made her, but because it was the only place she'd ever felt like the truest version of herself.
Her mother hated it. You smell like a gas station, Melissa would say. I am paying for that car so you don't have to crawl under one.
Charlie crawled under them anyway. She'd dropped out of the pre-law track her mother had selected for her and enrolled.
Against ferocious resistance, in a mechanical engineering program.
And the only person in the family who'd told her he was proud was the one the family was ashamed of.
Call me screaming because it's 30. You didn't invite you either. She said one started in a little pan.
No, Frank agreed. That's messed up, Pop. You basically raised half this family and they treat you like the help.
People treat you like what they need you to be, Frank said. Your mother needs me to be small so she can feel tall. That's not about me.
That's about how short she feels when she's honest with herself, which is never. Charlie was quiet, handing him a wrench.
Can I ask you something, and you won't get weird? I'm always weird. Ask, are we okay? Like money okay? Because I hear them fighting.
Dad thinks I don't hear. And Mom's spending like there was a party that cost more than a house, pop.
And meanwhile my tuition check bounced last month and she got so angry, like it was my fault. Her voice wobbled, just slightly.
And steadied, because she was Eleanor's great-granddaughter and the wobble never lasted long. Something's wrong. I can feel it.
Frank rolled out from under the car and looked at her, really looked, the grease on her cheekbone.
The worry she was trying to engineer out of her own face.
The steadiness underneath it that no money could buy and that her mother would never understand was the most valuable thing in the family.
He almost told her then. The whole thing. The empire, the trust, the forged signature, the trap. He came within one breath of it. But Charlie was clean.
When our car and walked away 2 days later, my mother called me screaming because 30 she was the only keen thing left, and Frank had learned the hard way that the surest way to win.
If she knew, she'd have to lie to her parents. If she lied, it would cost her something. He wouldn't spend her on this.
We're okay, he said. You're okay. I promise you that, and I have never once broken a promise to you, have I? No. Then trust this one.
Whatever happens with your folks in the next month, and something is going to happen, Charlie, I won't lie to you, you keep your hands clean and your head down and you let me handle it.
Can you do that? She studied him with those engineer's eyes that took everything apart. You know something, she said slowly. You know exactly what's wrong, don't you?
Frank handed her the wrench back and rolled himself under the car so she couldn't read his face, because the face is the last fortress and he'd never once surrendered it to anyone but Eleanor.
I know that this car needs a new water pump, he said, and that you're going to learn to install it, and that one day this whole shop is going to be yours.
Now hand me the 10mm and stop interrogating your elders. She laughed. She didn't know it was a will and testament.
She handed him the 10mm. Ah, Charlie. Charlie, I love like my own. Let me catch my breath, may you bame, and you catch yours.
A little more coffee? Some water? Are you still following along, or has the hour made your eyes heavy? Stay awake.
The part worth staying for is close now. 3 blocks from the studio where his daughter-in-law had handed him $50.
In a glass tower with his nemesis's loan inside it.
Later, my call 2 days later, Frank Holloway walking Apex Financials with the will believe it to be scored.
Within 90 seconds, to a top-floor office that the world did not know answered to him.
The man behind the desk was named Daniel Cho, Apex's chief compliance officer, and his hands were not entirely steady. Mr. Holloway. Sir.
We weren't told you'd be coming in person. Cho was one of perhaps 4 people at the bank who knew that the quiet 2009 acquisition by an entity called Eleanor Holdings had put a single anonymous investor in control of 53% of Apex's voting stock.
He had spent 11 years not saying the name out loud. What can I do for you? Frank set the forged loan guarantee on the desk.
You issued $3 million against a piece of land on Route 9, he said. The guarantor's signature on this document is forged.
I'm the guarantor. I never signed it. Which means you, Mr.
Cho, have a fraudulent loan on your books, originated through a broker named Trevor Maddox, and a compliance officer who's about to have a very interesting year, unless you do precisely what I tell you.
Cho went pale. Sir, if the guarantee's forged, we have to freeze it. Today. Regulation requires you're not going to freeze it. Sir.
You're going to fund it, Frank said. On schedule. Every dollar. You're going to let Maison Melly Meridian.
Whatever she's calling it this week, draw the full $3 million next Thursday.
And you're going to let it sit in her account looking shiny and real all the way through the night of her gala. He leaned forward.
Later mother called me screaming because it's their fault.
And what was underneath was the man who'd built an empire out of other people's underestimation.
And you're going to do it because I'm going to hand you, in writing, a full indemnification from Eleanor Holdings. The bank takes no loss. The bank takes no regulatory hit.
In fact, the bank is going to come out of this looking like the institution that caught a fraud ring, because you're going to be quietly cooperating with a federal investigation the entire time.
You won't be the bank that got fooled, Daniel. You'll be the bank that helped spring the trap.
Do you understand the difference that makes for your career? Cho sat back slowly.
You want us to let a known fraudulent loan fund so that the fraud completes itself in public.
I want every person who came after my land to be standing in the exact center of the crime, in front of the exact people they were trying to impress, at the exact moment they think they've won. Frank's voice was almost gentle.
Forgery in a quiet office on a Monday is a lawsuit.
Forgery exposed at a 200-person gala. With the money traced live and the witnesses watching, that's a reckoning.
And reckonings are the only thing people like Trevor Maddox actually fear. Lawsuits they budget for. Humiliation they can't.
And the federal investigation? Frank slid a card across the desk. A name. A field office. Already opened.
2 days later, my mother called screaming because the 30 brother Max's years.
I gave them the thing they were missing. He stood. You fund it Thursday, Mr. Cho.
And the night of the gala, you make sure the records are clean, time-stamped, and ready to be read out loud.
Eleanor Holdings will be very grateful. And you've seen, I think, what Eleanor Holdings can do when it's grateful. He walked out past the marble and the glass.
An old man in coveralls whom the lobby staff held the door for without knowing why they felt they should.
And he drove his grease-stained truck back to a one-bay garage that was, though no balance sheet would ever say so, the true headquarters of everything.
The federal building downtown smelled like every government building Frank had ever been in, burnt coffee, floor wax, and the particular boredom of people who have seen everything twice.
Special Agent Maria Okafor met him in a windowless room with a folder thick as a phone book and a wariness she didn't bother to hide. Mr. Holloway.
I'll be honest, when a private citizen walks in claiming to have completed a 6-year investigation we couldn't close, my first instinct is that he's either a crackpot or a problem. She opened the folder.
You're not a crackpot. Which leaves problem. So let's talk about why a retired mechanic has a forensic-grade case file on Trevor Maddox.
I'm not retired, Frank said. And I'm not a problem if you let me help you and you help me. You've wanted Maddox for years.
You've never been able to make wire fraud stick because his deals are structured so the fraud only completes at the very end.
2 days later, my mother called me the third time because too embarrassed to tell Raymond's.
I'm handing you a fraud that's going to complete itself in front of 200 witnesses, on a date I can tell you, in a room I can put you in.
Forged federal loan document. Funds drawn and traced live.
And a victim, me, who is not embarrassed and will testify to anything, because the victim happens to own the bank.
Okafor read for a long time. When she looked up, the wariness had been replaced by something more dangerous to Frank's enemies. Interest.
You understand the risk, she said. If we let this fund and play out in public and something goes sideways, if Maddox spooks.
If your daughter-in-law gets cold feet, if a guest live streams the whole thing before we move, it falls apart.
And the only person standing in the middle holding a forged document is you.
You'd be handing us a case and a defendant at the same time, and the defendant could be you. I know.
You'd be betting your own freedom on the timing of a sting at a black tie party.
I've spent 53 years betting that the right part, installed at the right moment, holds under load, Frank said.
I'm good at timing. It's the only thing I've ever been better at than everyone who underestimated me. He met her eyes.
A barely like 2 days later, my mother called me screaming because
He carried the forged document, but he didn't know it was forged. His wife used him.
When this comes down, I need you to be able to see the difference between a man who committed a crime and a man who married one.
I'm not asking you to protect a guilty man. I'm asking you not to crush an innocent fool by accident. Okafor studied him.
And if the evidence shows he knew, then he's yours, Frank said, and the words cost him something visible.
I won't lie to you to save him. I'd rather lose my son to the truth than keep a version of him built on a lie.
But the evidence won't show he knew. Because he didn't. And you'll see that, if you're as good as your file says you are. There was a long silence.
Then Okafor closed the folder and extended her hand, and her grip was the grip of someone who'd just decided to trust a man against her training.
3 weeks, she said. We'll be in the room. You run your end exactly as planned and you do not improvise, mister.
Holloway, because if you improvise at a federal sting, I will arrest you on principle. A pause. Off the record?
In 20 years I've watched a lot of rich men buy their way out of trouble.
I've never once watched one walk in and hand me a case to put a predator away and ask for nothing but mercy for a fool. Who are you?
2 days later, mother called me screaming because the man mechanic, Frank said standing. People keep forgetting that.
That is how Dona Cláudia knows you were sent to the right door. She does not tell this one to just anybody, Vayu.
Wet your throat, rest your eyes a moment. Then we walk into the room where nobody believes me until I tell it.
To understand why Frank Holloway was about to let a crime ripen instead of cutting it down.
You have to understand the will he and Eleanor had written 22 years earlier, at this same garage workbench.
On a night when Brett was 22 and had just totaled his second sports car and asked his father, with no shame at all, for a third.
He thinks money is weather, Eleanor had said that night. Something that just happens to you. Sunny days and rainy days.
He's never once thought about where it comes from because it's never once not been there. My fault, Frank said. I made it too easy.
Our fault. And we can't fix it by making it harder now, he'd just resent us.
We have to make it fair. She'd taken his greasy hand in both of hers. Promise me something, Frank Holloway.
Promise me we don't hand this boy $60 million to drown in. Promise me we build a door he has to earn the key to.
And if he never earns it, then it goes to whoever does. Then it goes to whoever does, she'd agreed. Blood or not. Earned or nothing. So they'd built the trust.
Carnage later, my mother called to me screaming because the 30 Brett would if by age will stay only if by the age of 40 been since a bod rather independent trustee.
Until then he'd have a comfortable allowance in the belief, which Frank deliberately cultivated, that his father was a man of modest means whose love was the only inheritance on offer.
Brett had turned 44 2 months before the graduation party.
The trustee's file on him was 3 pages long and devastating in its politeness. No enterprise founded. No value created.
Lifestyle financed by spousal debt and paternal subsidy. Determination. Condition not met. Brett had failed.
He'd never known he was being measured, and he'd failed anyway, which was somehow the most honest verdict of all. A man shows you who he is most clearly when he doesn't know he's being watched.
And here was the part that kept Frank up at night on the cold linoleum, Eleanor's clause. Earned or nothing. Blood or not.
The trust didn't just disinherit a failure. It actively sought out the one who'd earned it.
The trustee was instructed, on Brett's failure, to identify any heir who demonstrated the creation of genuine value through honest work and to redirect the estate accordingly.
Frank had a granddaughter who'd dropped a pre-law tract to crawl under cars because building things honestly was the only thing that made her feel real.
He hadn't engineered that. He'd have given anything for it to be Brett.
But Eleanor had written the door, and the door had quietly, over 19 years, chosen its own key, and her name was Charlotte.
My mother called 2 days later. My mother called me screaming as the 30 Frank could not simply avoid the loan on him.
Public irrefutable proof of who Brett and Melissa really were. And Frank needed it irrefutable, needed it witnessed.
Needed it on the record, because what was coming after the reckoning was an inheritance so contested, so unexpected.
That the only thing that could protect Charlie from a decade of lawsuits was a wall of evidence so high no one could climb it.
Melissa had handed him the bricks herself. He was simply going to let her keep stacking until the wall built itself.
"You're not getting revenge," Raymond said, when Frank explained it. "You're building a case." "I'm doing both," Frank said.
Eleanor always said the best revenge is the one that holds up in court.
Trevor Maddox had not gotten rich by ignoring the small wrong notes, and somewhere in the third week, a small wrong note began to play.
It started when his people ran the title on the Route 9 parcel.
The land was owned outright by an individual, Frank Holloway, the handy old man, the gardener, the joke. Fine.
But the parcel was zoned heavy industrial and assessed at a value that did not match an old man who drove a mud-colored truck.
And when Maddox's analyst tried to pull the entity that operated the facility on the land, Holloway Industries, the ownership disappeared up a staircase of holding companies that terminated in something called Eleanor Holdings.
2 days later, mother called me screaming because the 30, which was dumbest nowhere, fell in the public and answered no calls.
They were the kind of structure a man uses when he has a great deal to hide and the resources to hide it well.
Run the old man again, he told his analyst. Everything.
I want to know what a retired mechanic is doing sitting on 11 acres of industrial land and an entity I can't crack.
The analyst came back 2 days later looking spooked. "I can't crack it, Mr. Maddox. I've never not cracked one."
Whoever set up Eleanor Holdings spent serious money to make it a dead end. And the few threads I could pull, there's a guy. A lawyer. Raymond Stern.
He's been Holloway's attorney for 30-some years, and he is not the kind of lawyer you keep on retainer to do an old mechanic's wills.
Stern does mergers. Stern does things with 9 zeros.
For the first time in the whole clean operation, a cold finger touched the back of Trevor Maddox's neck. He went to Melissa.
He found her at the studio, surrounded by fabric samples for a gala she was about to host on money that wasn't real.
"Your father-in-law," Maddox said. "Tell me about him." Melissa laughed. "Frank? There's nothing to tell. He fixes cars."
He's finished, Trevor, I told you. He's not a factor.
So later, my mother called you screaming, "Owns 11 acres of land."
"That's the land," Melissa said, with the impatience of someone who has decided a thing and resents being asked to redecide it.
"It's worth money, sure, that's why it's the collateral, that's the whole point. He's land rich and brain poor.
He inherited that lot or bought it cheap 100 years ago and he's too simple to do anything with it but let his little business sit on it."
Trevor. She put a hand on his arm, all confidence. "I have known this man for 20 years.
He hands out $50 gift cards and apologizes for his hands. If he had any idea what we were doing, do you think he'd have signed?" Maddox looked at her.
And here is the thing about a predator: he can smell another predator, but only if he believes one might be in the room.
Melissa believed, with her whole heart, that there was no predator in the room but herself.
And her certainty was so total, so warm, so practiced, that it did what certainty always does to a nervous man: it reassured him against his own instincts.
"You're probably right," Maddox said. He was not probably right. But he wanted the 30 million the gala would raise.
And want is the rust that eats through judgment, and so Trevor Maddox, a careful man.
A man who'd smelled the smoke, chose to believe the woman who profited from him not believing his nose. He'd remember this conversation.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because 30, remember, break your clear later in a room full of federal and sulfur number.
"Careful, Corrito, your hand is shaking, you will spill the cup." "Ha! So does mine every single time right here."
"Remind me, Mayu Bame, who was it that brought you this story?" Never mind, never mind. Sit close to me."
The spider is getting nervous now, and so, I think, should you. 8 days before the gala, Brett came to the garage alone.
He hadn't been to the shop in years. He stood in the doorway in a cashmere quarter-zip, looking at the place he'd grown up in, the lift, the pegboard, Eleanor's radio.
The calendar still turned to the month she'd died because Frank had never been able to flip it, and something complicated moved across his surgeon's face.
Dad. Got a minute? For you? Always. Frank wiped his hands. You look thin, son. I'm fine.
Listen, Brett pulled a folded document from his jacket. Melissa's lawyers wanna. There's some paperwork that needs cleaning up.
On the family policy stuff you signed at Thanksgiving. Just a confirmation. They need you to re-sign this one page so the records match.
It's nothing. Insurance is a nightmare, you know how it is. Frank looked at the page without taking it.
He could see, even from here, what it was: a backdated guarantee, a clean one, a real signature to paper over the forged one. Melissa had gotten nervous.
Somewhere in her she knew that a forged signature was a bomb with a long fuse, and she wanted to defuse it by getting the real thing, getting Frank to retroactively agree to the thing she'd already done in his name.
Later, my mother called me screaming because turning.
If he signed, his land was legally, irrevocably, the collateral on her fraud. It was, Frank thought, almost elegant.
She'd stolen his name, and now she was sending his own son to ask him to give it to her for free. Sure, Frank said. Leave it with me.
I'll read it tonight and sign it and drop it by.
Relief flooded Brett's face, and that relief was the saddest thing Frank had seen in a month, because it meant the boy didn't know.
Brett wasn't relieved that his father would help cover a forgery. Brett didn't know there was a forgery.
He was just relieved that his dad would do the thing his wife needed without making it difficult, the way his dad always did everything without making it difficult.
Thanks, Dad. Really. Brett lingered. Hey, they at the party. I'm sorry about that. Melissa gets in these modes and you just go along. It's easier.
I know it is, son. Frank looked at him for a long moment, this child he'd loved and ruined with ease, this grown man who'd failed a test he never knew he was taking. It's always easier to go along.
Right up until the day it's the most expensive thing you ever did. He folded the document and put it in his coverall pocket. Drive safe. Brett left.
Frank took the document inside, photographed it, sent the photo to Raymond with 3 words, "She's getting nervous," and then he did not sign it.
He put it in a drawer, unsigned, where it would sit as one more piece of the wall, documented proof that Melissa, knowing the original was forged, had attempted to obtain a genuine signature to conceal it.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the 30 consciousness of guilt Ram color fries I knew was one.
That night Charlie texted him. Mom's acting insane about this gala. Dad looks like he hasn't slept. Pop, what is happening?
Frank looked at the message a long time. Trust me, 8 more days, he wrote back. Then you'll never have to wonder about this family again.
2 days before the gala, Frank and Raymond sat in the garage after dark and ran the night the way Frank ran everything, like a rebuild, step by step, anticipating the part most likely to fail under load.
The screen, Raymond said. If the hotel's AV tech won't take our file, Daniel Cho's people are running AV. It's handled.
The recording. If she claims it's doctored, forensic certifications attached.
And there are the people who heard her say it live in the studio, and Maddox heard it too.
And Maddox is going to be very motivated to tell the truth about everyone in about an hour. Frank turned a bolt over in his fingers.
The only part one can't control is people, Raymond. People are the part that thinks it's load-bearing and isn't. Melissa improvises.
If she improvises in a way I haven't wargamed, the garage phone rang. It was nearly 10 at night.
Frank looked at the curled cord landline, then at Raymond, then picked it up. Holloway.
Frank. Melissa's voice, warm, bright, the studio voice, the voice for people she needed something from.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming and Frank's body was 1:30.
I wanted to call before the big night. To make sure things are okay between us.
Things are fine, Melissa. Frank let his voice go soft and slow and small, the gardener's voice, the voice she'd written him into.
I appreciate you calling an old man. The gala's Friday.
I know we said it's a particular crowd, but I was thinking maybe you'd want to come? Just for a little while?
Family should be there. A pause, and under the warmth Frank could hear the thing she was actually doing, probing.
Maddox had spooked her with his questions about the land, about Eleanor Holdings, about Raymond Stern, and now some animal part of Melissa was calling to take the temperature of the man everyone kept telling her was nothing.
Did you ever sign that paperwork, by the way? Brett mentioned he dropped it off. No rush. I just want the family's affairs all tidy.
There it was. The whole reason for the call, wrapped in an invitation she didn't mean. Frank closed his eyes.
This was the part you couldn't wargame. This was the load test, live, no rehearsal.
Oh, the insurance forms, he said, and let a note of confusion in, an old man's vagueness. I've got them on the kitchen table somewhere.
I keep meaning to read them but my eyes aren't what they were and the print's so small. I'll get to it. Is it important?
Later, my mother called me scared as prairie legs.
He could hear down the line, the exact moment Melissa Holloway redecided that her father-in-law was harmless, confused, half-blind, slow, exactly as small as she needed him to be.
The animal part of her settled back down to sleep, reassured, the way Maddox's had settled when she'd reassured him.
The whole family was a chain of predators talking each other out of their own instincts, and Frank was the one feeding them the reassurance, one soft sentence at a time.
No rush at all, she said, bright again. Whenever you get to it. So Friday? Shall I have someone send a car?
I'd like that, Frank lied gently. I'd like to see Cameron. And the lights and everything. I'll feel out of place but I'd like to come.
Wonderful. I'll put you down. A laugh. Oh, and Frank, wear something nice, would you? For me? I'll find something, Frank said.
I'll wear my very best. He hung up. He stood with his hand on the phone for a moment in the dark garage. Well, Raymond said. She called to find out if I was a threat.
I told her I couldn't read the small print. Frank turned around, and his face had the thing on it again, the alarming thing.
And she invited me to the gala. Officially. Wants to send a car. He almost laughed.
She just put the man who's going to destroy her on her own guest list, Raymond, because she needed, one more time, to feel tall next to somebody she'd decided was short.
That's the part one couldn't have planned. That's the part she did to herself. Raymond shook his head slowly.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because they're not going to take the car.
And I want the last thing on the valet log, when the federal agents pull the records, to be that the woman who said I was an embarrassment sent a private car to bring me to the scene of her own undoing. He picked up the bolt again.
Wear my very best. I'm renting a tuxedo. One night. I'm not buying a tuxedo to bury my son's marriage in.
2 nights before it all burns, and look, you are still here. A faithful soul. Let me wet my mouth.
Pour some for yourself too, the pot is still hot. You are following every thread? BOM.
Because tomorrow, in the story, is the night the whole house catches fire.
The pieces, by the eve of the gala, sat on Frank's workbench the way a rebuilt engine sits before you drop it back in, every part cleaned, labeled, torqued to spec.
There was the forged guarantee and the recording from the studio.
There was Brett's unsigned backdated document, the attempt to cover the forgery.
There was a sworn, time-stamped statement from Daniel Cho at Apex confirming the loan's origination and the bank's cooperation.
There was a thick federal file on Trevor Maddox, 6 years in the making, with Frank's evidence finally completing it.
There was a forensic accountant's trace showing exactly how the 3 million would move, and where, the moment it was drawn.
So later my mother called me screaming because of 30 and there was a quiet letter from the independent trustee.
He sat alone at the bench past midnight, Eleanor's radio playing low, and he did the thing he'd done before every hard decision of his life. He talked to his dead wife.
You tell me I'm enjoying this too much, he said to the empty shop.
You'd be right. He turned the $50 gift card over in his fingers. He'd brought it out of the safe.
But you'd also tell me that letting them ruin Charlie's inheritance with lawsuits, just so I could feel clean for cutting it off early, would be cowardice dressed up as decency.
So, he set the gift card down. We do it your way. Earned or nothing. In the open. So high no one can climb it. The shop door opened.
Frank turned, and it was Cameron. The grandson. The graduate.
Tall, awkward, 18, in a hoodie instead of a sash, standing in the doorway of a garage Frank wasn't sure the boy had ever once visited.
Grandpa. Cameron's voice cracked on it. I saw you. At the party.
They turned you away on the step and Mom laughed and I've been sick about it for weeks.
I keep seeing your face through the glass. He swallowed. I didn't do anything. I just stood there. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, I should have come out, I should have.
Days later, my mother called 2 days later, my mother called me screaming because of 13 and that.
There's something wrong with them, isn't there? It wasn't a question. With Mom. With how we live. The money's fake, isn't it? All of it.
I'm not stupid, I see the bills, I see Dad's face. Cameron's eyes were wet and furious. I don't want it, Grandpa. Whatever it is. I don't want to be them.
Frank looked at this boy, raised in the lie, marinated in it, and somehow, like his sister, surfacing anyway, and felt the first thing that wasn't strategy move through him in a month.
Eleanor's claws whispered in his head. Blood or not. Earned or nothing. 2 of them. 2 out of 3 had surfaced. Cameron, he said.
Tomorrow night something is going to happen at your mother's gala.
It's going to be hard to watch and you're going to learn things about your parents that you can't unlearn.
I need you to do something for me, and it's the hardest thing I've ever asked anyone. Anything. I need you to be there.
And I need you to do nothing. No matter what you see. Stand with your sister, hold her hand, and let it happen. Frank held his gaze. Can you carry that?
Cameron wiped his face with the back of his hand, a gesture so exactly like Charlie, like Eleanor, that Frank's chest tightened. Yeah, he said. I can carry that.
After the boy left, Frank sat back down at the bench and said, to the radio, to the empty shop, to the woman who wasn't there, 3 for 3, Ellie.
Door chose all 3 of them, in their own way. Some doors are more generous than the people who walk through them deserve.
Later, my mother called me screaming because 30 the Marine Design Blanche guy that was.
And it cost. Though only Frank knew the precise number, $140,000.
Paid for with money that had been real for exactly 6 days. 200 guests in black tie.
The string quartet, upgraded now to a small orchestra. Ice sculptures of the Meridian logo. A wall of orchids.
And moving through all of it like a flame through dry grass, Melissa, in a column of silver silk.
More luminous and more certain than Frank had ever seen her.
Because she was 8 hours from raising $40 million and erasing forever the inconvenient truth of where she'd come from.
The serious investors were there. The Gulf family office, represented by 2 grave men who drank only water.
The tech couple, young and watchful. A row of old money faces that had taken Melissa 2 years and every favor she had to assemble.
They sat at the front tables, and a presentation screen glowed behind the lectern, and on a side table sat a fat leather folder of subscription agreements waiting for signatures that would, by midnight, total a fortune.
Trevor Maddox worked the room in a tuxedo, smiling, shaking hands, a spider admiring a web he intended to eat. Brett stood near the bar.
Handsome and hollow-eyed, performing the role of successful husband for chief of surgery and magazine editor alike.
Walked away 2 days later. Mother called me the 13 not knowing that the furnish on his hip.
In the only rented tuxedo in the room, because he'd refused to buy one for a single night's work, sat an old man with clean hands for once.
Beside his lawyer, with his 2 grandchildren 2 tables over holding hands and keeping a promise. Nobody had invited Frank Holloway.
He'd bought a ticket. Through a shell. Table 19, in the back, by the kitchen doors, the table you give to people who don't matter. It was perfect.
He could see the whole room from there, and the whole room had its back to him, which is the ideal position from which to end the war.
Last chance, Raymond murmured. We could still do this quietly. Tomorrow. An office. No audience.
Frank watched Melissa take the lectern to scattered, expensive applause.
He watched her smile out at the people she'd spent her whole life trying to become, the people who'd called him the gardener, the people who measured a man by his hands.
She told me the real money is in making people believe, Frank said softly. Let's find out what she believes when nobody's buying.
He took out his phone and sent one text, to a number Daniel Cho had given him, to a man in a parked car outside with a federal warrant and 5 colleagues.
It said, now. Now. Now we stand at the very door of the ballroom.
Breathe, meu bem, Dona Cláudia always stops right here, just here, to let your heart settle a little. Coffee? No?
To wait 2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the 30.
Melissa's voice filled the ballroom warm and bright and practiced.
20 years ago, she said, I married into a family that taught me something profound.
They taught me that where you come from is nothing.
That a person can be born with grease under their nails, and nothing to their name. A fond, devastating little laugh.
And Frank watched several investors smile, charmed, and through vision, through belief, build a life of beauty and meaning.
Meridian is that belief, made real. Tonight I'm not asking you to invest in a design firm.
I'm asking you to invest in the idea that we get to choose who we become. She raised a glass. The room raised theirs.
To becoming, Melissa said, everything we were never supposed to be.
And the lights went down for her presentation, and the screen behind her brightened, and the first slide was supposed to read Meridian, a new standard.
It did not read that. What came up on the screen, in front of 200 people in black tie, was a scanned image of a loan guarantee.
$3 million, secured against 11 acres on Route 9, and beneath it, blown up to 4 feet wide, 2 signatures side by side.
Because there's my mother called me Holloway because 30.
Holloway. Guarantor. And between them in red, a forensic examiner's annotation. Inconsistent. Probable forgery. The orchestra straggled to a stop.
Melissa turned to look at the screen, and for one full second her face did not understand what it was seeing. Then it did.
And then Frank Holloway's voice came through the ballroom speakers, not Frank in person, not yet, but Frank's recording, the studio, 3 weeks old, crisp and clear and run through 9 chandeliers into absolute silence.
You know what your problem is, Frank?
You've spent your whole life with your hands in an engine because you don't understand that the real money, is in making people believe.
By the time I'm done, no one will even remember that's what you were. Melissa's own voice. Filling the room she'd built to worship her.
200 faces turned, slowly, looking for the source, and found, rising from table 19 by the kitchen doors, unhurried, an old man in a rented tuxedo with clean hands, and his late wife's father's watch in his pocket.
Evening, Frank said. Sorry I'm late. I wasn't on the list. For a moment nobody moved.
200 people who had spent their lives in rooms where the worst thing that ever happened was a bad oyster did not have a procedure for this.
Melissa found her voice first, and it was the wrong voice, too loud, too fast. This is security.
This man he's my husband's father, he's unwell, he's obsessed with our family, get him out.
2 days later, planned my mother called me screaming because of 3011 talks. I wanted the Graven from the Gulf family.
Frank walked to the front of the room. He didn't hurry. He'd waited 3 weeks.
He could spare the room 30 seconds of his unhurried boots on the marble.
My name is Frank Holloway, he said, and his voice without the recording was quiet, and the quiet made everyone lean in.
Most of you have been told I'm an embarrassment. A mechanic. A man you wouldn't want at a party like this. That's true. I am a mechanic.
I've had my hands in engines for 53 years, and there is not one thing in my life I'm prouder of than that.
He turned to the investors at the front tables.
You came here tonight to put money into Meridian Design Group, because Meridian showed you a balance sheet with $3 million of fresh capital on it.
I'm here to tell you where that $3 million came from. It came from a loan.
The loan was secured against my land, 11 acres on Route 9, using a personal guarantee that I never signed. You just watched the forensic comparison.
My daughter-in-law forged my name to make her company look solvent long enough to take your money. He let that sit.
There is no business under Meridian. There never was. You were invited here to fund a hole. The tech wife had already stood up. So had 2 of the old money faces.
2 days my mother called me streaming because the photo subscription agreement, so I started stuff.
Melissa was shaking her head, a fixed bright smile cracking at the edges. He's lying, he's a bitter old man who...
Then sue me, Frank said. You're welcome to.
But you should know who you'd be suing. He looked, for the first time, directly at Trevor Maddox, who had gone very still by the bar.
You'd be suing the majority owner of Apex Financial, the bank that issued your loan. A ripple went through the room.
I bought control of Apex 11 years ago. Through an entity your friend Mr.
Maddox spent 2 weeks and a great deal of money trying and failing to unwind. It's called Eleanor Holdings. It's named after my wife.
She's the one who taught me to never risk the ground you stand on, which is why, when someone forged my name to risk it, I didn't just want it back.
I wanted to understand exactly who'd come for it. Maddox set down his glass and began, very casually, to move toward the doors. He didn't reach them.
The 4 people who came through the kitchen entrance and the 2 who came through the main doors were not in black tie.
They were in windbreakers with 3 yellow letters on the back, and the lead agent had a folder of her own.
Trevor Maddox, she said, you're under arrest.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because of 30 wire fraud, bank fraud, and a few other things we went for session.
Holloway's documentation completed the picture nicely.
What happened to Trevor Maddox's face in that moment was the thing Frank would describe to Charlie, much later.
As the only genuinely educational sight of the evening, the face of a predator realizing, far too late,
That he'd smelled the smoke and talked himself out of the fire. I had the chance to walk away, that face said, and I sold it for a number.
But the worst moment, the one that wasn't satisfying at all, the one Frank had braced for and still wasn't ready for, was Brett.
His son had come down from the bar. He was standing in the middle of the ballroom in his beautiful blazer, looking at the screen.
At the 2 signatures, at the red word probable forgery, and his surgeon's mind, trained to read evidence.
To never look away from the thing on the table was assembling a diagnosis he could not bear.
Melissa. Brett's voice was strange and flat. The Thanksgiving forms. The insurance forms you had me bring to Dad. He turned to her.
You told me he signed all of them. You told me everything was handled. His eyes went to the screen. To the forged signature.
That's not his signature. Whose signature is that, Melissa? The room was so quiet you could hear the orchids.
2 days later, my mother called me because it's great and Melissa looked there.
Because the one audience she'd never rehearsed for was the man who'd believed her without checking.
And now the checking was 4 feet tall and red on a screen behind her. I did it for us, she said. For the family. You were never going to.
You forged my father's name. Brett said it slowly, the way you'd say a fatal lab result out loud to make yourself believe it.
You made me the one who carried the document to him. You used my hands. He looked down at his own hands then. The clean ones.
The surgeon's hands he'd been so proud weren't his father's.
And Frank, watching his son finally understand what he'd been going along with all these easy years, felt no triumph at all.
He felt the specific grief of a man who'd known the diagnosis for 3 weeks and had to watch the patient receive it in public.
That was the only part of the night Eleanor would not have enjoyed. Frank made sure, later, to remember that. Oof-ah.
Did you feel that pass through you? I always do. Sit back, drink your water, you have earned it just by listening this long. Still awake?
Still mine? Good. We are not finished, you and I. The small justices are left, and the small ones, Querido, are the sweetest of all.
While the empire fell at the front of the room, 2 young people sat very still at table 11 and kept the hardest promise either of them had ever made.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the 30 Charlie had known some of it was coming.
So when the screen lit up with the forged signatures and their mother's own voice came pouring through the chandeliers,
it was Cameron who started to rise, instinct hauling him up out of his chair, every cell in him screaming to do something.
To run to his mother, to make it stop, to be anywhere but frozen in a chair watching his family dissolve in front of 200 strangers.
Charlie's hand closed over his wrist like a vice. No, she breathed. You promised him. Sit. Sit. Charlie, that's Mom.
I know whose it is. Her own eyes were bright and terrible.
And Pop knew too, for weeks, and he chose to do it this way, in the open, in front of everyone, and I didn't understand why until right now. She kept her grip on her brother's wrist and her eyes on the front of the room.
He's not destroying them, Cam. He's making it undeniable.
He's building a wall so high that no court, no lawyer, no version of Mom that ever exists again can climb over it and come after us.
Every second we sit here doing nothing is a brick. So we sit. We do nothing. We let it be true in front of witnesses. That's the gift.
That's the whole gift. Cameron sat. He was shaking. Charlie laced her fingers through his and they held on to each other.
2 kids in formal wear at a ruined party, doing the single hardest thing a person can do.
Walked away 2 days later, mother called me screaming with the third to love someone enough to the truth happen to them when you have the power to soften it in.
around them the room emptied in waves.
Charlie watched it the way her grandfather had taught her, without quite knowing he'd taught her, to watch an engine, looking for the part that fails first.
The serious investors went first and fastest. The 2 grave men from the Gulf family office rose together, buttoned their jackets, and left without a word.
Their water glasses untouched men who had nearly written 8-figure checks into a forged hole, and now wanted only to be very far away and never named.
The tech couple followed, the wife already on her phone, the husband's face a study in the specific horror of the nearly defrauded.
The old money faces drifted out in 2s and 3s, gathering their stoles and their dignity, mentally drafting the story they'd tell at better vetted tables for the next year. We were there.
The fraud party. The mechanic stood up at the back.
And then the people who'd come for the spectacle drifted out too, lingering a beat too long, until Agent Okafor's people quietly began asking them to clear the room so they could work.
Cameron watched Trevor Maddox get handcuffed near the bar, the smooth man who'd tried to take their family's land out from under them, the spider, going gray and silent as the cuffs clicked.
He watched a federal agent read the man his rights in a flat-board voice under 9 chandeliers.
He watched his mother stop being able to find anyone to call.
Mother 2 days later, mother was screaming because he watched his father. Brit sit down or asking to put his surgeons to hands in his own pounds.
Is Dad going to jail? Cameron whispered.
I don't think so, Charlie whispered back, and she was right, though she didn't know yet how she knew.
I think Pop made sure they'd know the difference between Dad and Mom.
I think that's why he did the recording, and the screen, all of it. So everyone could see exactly who did what. Dad was a fool. Mom was a criminal.
Pop built it so even strangers could tell them apart. Her voice cracked, just slightly, and steadied, because she was Eleanor's.
He protected Dad even while he was destroying Dad's whole life. That's the kind of man he is.
He'll burn the house down and still carry the one person worth saving out the back.
Across the wrecking room, Frank Holloway looked up just once and found his 2 grandchildren at table 11, hands locked together, doing exactly what he'd asked, carrying the unbearable.
He didn't smile at them.
A smile would have been too much, would have made it a performance, would have spent something he wasn't willing to spend in that room.
He just held their eyes for 1 second, the way you'd nod to a fellow soldier across a battlefield you both survived.
So their plan walked 2 days later, Mama called me screaming because... Then he turned back to the work because there was still a dotted line in the corner, ran out of stitching himself.
Charlie squeezed her brother's hand. Almost over, she said. He's almost done.
And then it's just us, and the shop, and whatever comes next. She looked at her grandfather's straight old back in his rented tuxedo.
I think what comes next is going to be better than anything they were ever building. I think it's going to be real. It was.
But first, there was $3,400.
The gala collapsed the way a soufflé collapses, all at once, and then somehow still collapsing for a long time after.
The investors left first, fast and embarrassed, the Gulf men and the tech couple and the old money, none of them wanting to be photographed at the fraud party. Then the merely curious.
Then the people Melissa had spent 2 years cultivating, who would by morning be telling the story at their own better-vetted tables.
The orchestra packed up mid-collapse. The ice sculptures of the Meridian logo wept quietly into their trays.
By 11:30 the ballroom held maybe a dozen people, Frank and Raymond.
Charlie and Cameron, still at their table, still holding hands, keeping the hardest promise.
Brett, sitting alone now on the edge of the dais with his face in his clean hands.
Ma 2 days later, Mother came screaming on the front end of the A&M.
And the hotel's banquet manager, a patient man named Oswaldo, who approached Melissa with the apologetic firmness of someone who has done this before. Mrs. Holloway, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
The balance for this evening, the catering, the room, the bar, comes to $3,400 over the deposit.
We'll need to settle that before the staff can close out.
Melissa, barely looking at him, handed over a black credit card without breaking from her phone call. Oswaldo went away. Oswaldo came back.
I'm sorry, ma'am. It's been declined. She handed him another. Declined. Another. Declined. Because at 9:47 that evening,
The moment the federal agents executed the warrant.
The accounts connected to Meridian and to the fraudulent loan had been frozen, and Melissa's personal cards,
the ones she'd been quietly funding the whole charade with, were so tangled up in the same web that the freeze swallowed them too.
The woman who had hosted a $140,000 gala could not produce $3,400 to pay the people who'd served it.
She turned, finally, off the phone, and looked across the wrecked ballroom, and her eyes found, at last, the only person in the room with money.
Frank. He watched her decide to ask. He watched 20 years of contempt rearrange itself, in real time, into a plea.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because of 30.
Frank, she said, crossing the marble, her heels loud in the empty room. Frank, please.
The card, there's been some mistake with the accounts, it's just temporary, I just need, it's $3,400. You have it.
I know you have it now, I heard a wild laugh. Apparently you have everything. Just this one thing. For the family. For Brett. Please.
Frank reached into his jacket. The whole room held its breath. Charlie, Cameron, Raymond, even Oswaldo. And Frank took out the envelope. The one from the studio.
He opened it and removed the $50 gift card to the hardware store and held it out to her between two fingers.
For the family, he said. Treat yourself to something. He let the words land.
Then he slipped the card back into his own pocket. It was too honest a thing to leave behind, and he walked past her.
And he did not look back, and behind him he heard the small precise sound of Melissa Holloway beginning.
For the first time in her adult life, to cry without an audience she could use. $50, meu bem. 50.
I told that part to my neighbor once and she laughed so hard she spilled her coffee down her good dress.
Speaking of, your cup is empty again. Let me. Are you tired? Say the word and Dona Cláudia will slow down.
2 David screaming because the third might not think about a house.
It is another to live in the neighborhood while it finishes falling.
The story moved fast, the way stories do when rich people humiliate themselves in rooms full of other rich people.
By the second day there was an item in the business pages, design firm Gala ends in fraud arrest, that mentioned Maddox by name and Meridian by name and,
mercifully, did not yet mention the Holloways, because Raymond had made 3 quiet calls and pulled in a favor or two.
Frank had no interest in seeing his son's name in print. The reckoning had been for the room. It did not need to be for the world.
At the garage, Charlie was a wreck and a marvel in equal measure.
She came in Saturday, white-faced, and stood in the bay with her arms crossed. You knew, she said, the whole time.
When I asked you in this exact spot if we were okay, you knew.
You knew Mom was a criminal and you knew you were going to blow up our entire family in front of 200 people and you looked me in the eye and said we're okay.
I said you were okay, Frank said quietly. That part was true. And I kept you out of it on purpose, Charlie.
If I'd told you, you'd have had to lie to your mother, and lying would have cost you something, and I was not willing to spend 1 cent of you on this.
Days later, Mother called me screaming because the 30 not one. He set down the wrench. He said I didn't tell you.
Those were the only 2 choices I had, and I picked the one that kept your hands clean. I'd pick it again.
Charlie's jaw did the thing that was Eleanor's. Then it crumpled.
and she crossed the bay and put her face against her grandfather's oil-stained coverall and cried like the kid she still partly was.
And Frank held her with both arms and looked at Eleanor's calendar still turned to the wrong month and thought, This
is the only part that was ever worth protecting. Is it true? She said into his chest. What they said. The bank. The land.
You're, Pop, are you actually rich? Yeah. He felt her go still. Have been your whole life. Hid it. I had reasons.
Good ones, I think, though we'll argue about it for years, and you'll win some of those arguments. He held her back, so he could see her face.
Money ruins people who don't earn it, Charlie. It ruined your father, and I let it, and that's the one true failure of my life.
So I made a rule a long time ago, your grandmother and I.
In this family, money goes to the people who'd have built something good with their hands whether the money showed up or not. He looked at her, oil on her cheekbone, 19 years old, the truest version of herself in a borrowed coverall.
It took me a long time to find out who that was. But I think I have. Charlie didn't understand him yet. That was fine.
2 days I replied, my mother called me screaming, could have standing, could wait for the letter. Trevor Maddox facing decades of my life.
He handed prosecutors the whole architecture of the Meridian deal, and in doing so he handed them, and through Raymond eventually Frank, a final piece of the picture that recolored everything that had come before.
Melissa had not forged Frank's name for the family. She had forged it for herself, and the family was the cover.
In the documents Maddox surrendered were the bones of a second plan, running underneath the first like a shadow under a floor.
Melissa had been quietly moving assets into accounts in her name alone for 18 months.
She had a separate attorney, not the family's, not anyone Brett knew, drafting a divorce.
The plan, as Maddox understood it, had 3 acts: raise $40 million at the gala,
Siphon a controlling personal stake out of Meridian in the chaos of a growing company.
And then, with money of her own at last, leave Brett, the dull-credentialed husband who'd served his purpose as a respectable face, and walk into the upper-class life she'd always believed was her birthright.
Brett was not her partner. Brett was her exit strategy.
The man who'd carried the forged document to his own father had been, in his wife's actual plan, a tool to be discarded the moment he stopped being decorative.
Raymond brought this to Frank at the garage, and Frank read it twice, and then he sat for a long time with Eleanor's radio playing.
Later, Mother Cláudia screams, "Is it 30?
He'll find out in the divorce filings soon enough, and it'll be worse coming from a court than from me, and either way it'll break something in him that needs to break." He rubbed his face.
My son is a weak man, Raymond. Not a cruel one. Weak. He went along.
He spent his whole life choosing the easier thing, and the easier thing turned out to be married to a woman who was going to throw him away the second she didn't need his face anymore. He shook his head slowly.
The cruelest thing I could do to Brett right now is rescue him. So I won't. And the kindest?
Frank looked out at the bay, where Charlie had a hood up and her head inside an engine.
The kindest is to let him hit the bottom, and then, only if he reaches for the right rung, hand him a job. An honest one.
Here, sweeping the bay at first. Earning it. The same door I built for him 22 years ago.
Except this time he knows the lock is his own character, and this time he's standing in front of it with nothing in his pockets.
Which is the only condition under which a man like Brett has ever learned anything. He turned to Raymond. Earned or nothing.
It was never just a clause. It was the only mercy I had that wouldn't poison him. You are shaking your head.
Everybody shakes their head right here. Dona Cláudia did too, the very first time. Here, water, drink.
Later, Mother called me screaming because the 30 tell me once more ends.
There is a door on Delancey Street about to open.
They came to him 8 days after the gala, on a gray Tuesday, to the little brick house with the linoleum from the Carter administration.
Frank saw them through the window before they knocked, Brett, gaunt, unshaven, in a coat that suddenly looked too big.
And Melissa, who had clearly insisted on coming, who had clearly decided that the man she called an embarrassment was now the only door left, and that she could, with the right words, get it open.
She dressed for it.
Even now, even ruined, she dressed for it. A tasteful camel coat, hair done, the costume of a woman who still believed presentation was a form of power.
Frank let them stand on the step a moment. The same step, he thought. There's a kind of justice that just rhymes.
Then he opened the door, because they were cold, and he was not Melissa.
Frank. She started before she was even inside, the words rehearsed, rapid. I know. I know.
I've made terrible mistakes and I will spend the rest of my life, but Frank, this isn't about me anymore.
There are consequences coming, legal consequences, and they won't just land on me, they'll touch Brett, they'll touch the children, Cameron's future, Charlie's, and you have the means to make this go away.
There's a trust, everyone knows there's a trust, and you could use it to settle everything quietly, make the charges go away, retain the lawyers, and this whole nightmare just ends.
For the family. For your grandchildren. You wouldn't punish them for what I did. It was, Frank had to admit, a good play.
She'd found the one lever that might actually move him, the grandchildren, and she'd reached for it with both hands. He looked at her for a long moment.
Then he looked at Brett, who hadn't said a word, who was staring at the linoleum his mother had picked out in 1979. "Brett," Frank said.
Do you want to ask me for anything? Brett opened his mouth. Closed it.
And then, very quietly, in a voice Frank hadn't heard from him since he was a boy, "No. I don't think I have the right to."
And that was the first interest payment on a debt 20 years overdue. Frank felt it land. He didn't show it.
He turned back to Melissa. "There's no trust money for you," he said. "Not a dollar."
Not to make charges go away, not to retain lawyers, not for the family. And I'll tell you exactly why, so you never have to wonder.
The trust isn't a slush fund, Melissa. It's a door.
22 years ago my wife and I built it so that the people in this family who created something honest would inherit, and the people who only ever consumed would not.
Because later my mother called me screaming because there's for a partner.
But you? He shook his head slowly. You didn't fail the test. You never even took it.
You looked at a family that built things and you decided the smart move was to steal the appearance of having built something. You forged my name. You used my son's hands.
You planned to throw him away when you were done with him. He watched her flinch, watched her realize he knew. "Yes, I know about that too."
"And you stood on stolen land held in my dead wife's name, and handed me $50, and told me I was finished."
So here's what's true, Melissa. I am not going to punish my grandchildren for what you did. I'm going to do the opposite.
I'm going to make sure that everything you tried to steal goes to the one person in this family who'd have earned it with her own 2 hands if I'd been born without a cent.
And there is nothing you can threaten or cry or rehearse that will move that 1 inch. He stepped back and put his hand on the door.
You wanted to erase the mechanic. Instead, you handed his granddaughter an empire. Go home, Melissa. Or go to whatever's left of it.
You can't. Her voice broke high and ugly. You owe this family, you.
I owed this family my honesty and my work and my love, and they got all 3, for 53 years, and you called it an embarrassment. Frank's voice never rose.
That was the terrible part, it never once rose. We're done. Brett, when you're ready to earn something honest, you know where the shop is.
Did it even? Because later my mother called me screaming because
That's the only door I have left for you. And it's more than most men get twice. He closed the door. Gently.
The way you close a door on something you've decided isn't yours to deal with.
Then he stood in the little brick kitchen and put both hands flat on the counter and breathed, for a while, in the quiet.
Until the heavy door in his chest that had locked the night of the invitation finally, slowly, swung back open, not to them. Never again to them. But open. Lighter. Done.
The day after he closed the door on Brett and Melissa, Frank drove out to the Route 9 land alone, the way he did when he needed to remember why any of it had mattered.
He parked the truck at the edge of the 11 acres and walked the fence line the way he'd walked it for 40 years.
Holloway Industries hummed on the far side. 3 shifts for 100 people.
All of them homeowners and tuition payers and small honest builders of their own small honest lives.
None of them aware that the ground their livelihoods stood on had nearly been gambled away on a forged signature and a fraud.
This was what Eleanor had made him promise to protect. Not the money. The ground. The thing you stand on.
She'd understood, before he had, that a fortune is weather but the ground is forever, and that a man who keeps the ground can always rebuild the fortune, while a man who keeps the fortune and loses the ground has kept nothing at all.
to me because the Charlie found him on ready to go on.
She pulled up in her car and came to stand beside him at the fence. I figured you'd be here, she said. You okay?
I closed the door on your father and your mother yesterday, Frank said. A man doesn't do that and feel okay.
He does it and feels right, which is a colder thing, and he comes out here to be reminded why right was worth more than okay. He nodded at the land.
Your great-grandmother made me promise to never risk this ground. 40 years I kept it.
Then your mother forged my name to gamble it away, and I had to decide whether keeping my temper was the same as keeping my promise. He looked at Charlie.
It wasn't. Sometimes the only way to keep the ground is to be willing to burn down everything standing on it that doesn't belong. That's a hard thing. I don't recommend it.
But when it's the ground your dead wife asked you to protect, you do the hard thing, and you don't apologize, and you come out here afterward to make sure you can still look the ground in the eye.
Charlie was quiet a while, the two of them at the fence, the factory humming. Can you, she asked, look it in the eye?
Frank considered the 11 acres for a long moment. Yeah, he said. I can.
Because the ground's still here, and the people on it still have their jobs, and the only things I burned down were the things that came to take it.
Eleanor would have said I took too long and enjoyed it too much, and she'd have been right on both counts. A ghost of a smile.
Tuesday, her mother called me screaming, but the ground says 30. The ground says that's a promise.
Then Frank put his hand on the fence post old wood, sunk by his own hands in 1981, and said quietly to no one Charlie could see. Still here, Ellie.
Still ours. Both of those things, on purpose.
And Charlie, who'd inherited her great-grandmother's jaw and her great-grandfather's hands and the whole weight of a promise she was only beginning to understand, put her hand on the post beside his.
Still ours, she agreed.
It was, Frank thought, driving home behind the Oxblood Mustang, the first time the word ours had meant the right people in a very long time.
Eleanor. I never met the woman and still I miss her. Can you believe such a thing? Pause with me a breath, meu bame. More coffee, I insist.
No arguing with an old woman in her own kitchen. Still here with Dona Cláudia? Then come. There is a letter you need to hear read aloud.
Frank waited 2 weeks before he showed Charlie the safe, because some inheritances need the dust of the old life to settle before you hand someone the new one.
He brought her to the brick house on a Sunday and made her bad coffee, and then he opened the closet, moved the false panel his own hands had built, and knelt in front of the safe.
He spun the dial. Eleanor's birthday. It still opened on her birthday. I want to show you what I am, he said. What I really am.
And then I'm going to show you what your grandmother decided, a long time before you could drive, about who gets to keep it.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because 30 took out the folders one at a time and laid them on the kitchen near thieves.
Holloway Industries, the third largest independent maker of automotive components in the country, her grandfather's company, the dumb little garage's grown-up self.
The patents, 41 of them, with Frank's name and the small careful drawings he'd done at this very table.
The Route 9 land, free and clear, the ground Eleanor made him promise never to risk. Apex Financial. Eleanor Holdings.
The commercial buildings. A number at the bottom of a summary page that made Charlie sit down hard in a kitchen chair.
62 million, she whispered. Pop pop. You drive a truck held together with prayer. I like the truck.
You let Mom hand you a $50 gift card. I framed the gift card, Frank said. It's the most honest thing she ever gave me.
It told me exactly who she was, and people who tell you who they are should be believed and kept on file. Then he took out the last thing.
Not a folder. A single envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed, with handwriting on the front that wasn't his.
Charlie went still when she saw it, because she knew that handwriting from birthday cards and the backs of photographs and a recipe box she'd been given when she was small.
Your grandmother wrote this 22 years ago, Frank said, and his voice wasn't entirely steady now. When we built the trust.
The trust has a clause. It says the estate goes to whoever in this family creates real value through honest work, blood or not, earned or nothing.
Says third of my mother calls.
The trustees spent 19 years quietly watching this family, and a while back the door we built chose its key. He set the envelope in front of her.
Eleanor wrote a letter, back then, to whoever that turned out to be. She never knew it would be you.
She died before you fell in love with engines. But she wrote to you, Charlie, without knowing your name.
She wrote to the person you decided to become. Charlie's hands were shaking. I can't, you can. You're hers. Open it. She opened it.
And she read, in the careful slanted hand of a great-grandmother she'd been too young to really remember, words written for a stranger who'd turned out to be her.
To whoever earned this, if you're reading this.
Then somewhere in our family a person grew up who builds things instead of just spending them.
Who'd have gotten their hands dirty whether or not there was money in it, and who was honest when being honest cost something.
Frank and I bet our whole estate that such a person would come. We never knew your name.
We just trusted that good work runs in a family even when easy money tries to drown it. This money is not a gift. Gifts ruin people.
We learned that the hard way, and someone you love probably paid the price for our learning. This is a tool. It's a bigger version of a wrench.
Later, my mother, 2 days later, my mother goes screaming, uses 30 lunch of pickles broken to bill what's needed.
Take care of Frank. He pretends he doesn't need it. He needs it. And keep the shop. Whatever else you do with all of it, keep the shop.
That little garage is where everything we ever made that mattered actually got made.
The rest is just the shadow the shop casts when the money piles up behind it. Earned or nothing. You earned it. Now go build something good.
Eleanor Charlie put the letter down and cried, and Frank held her again, the second time in a month.
And over her shoulder he looked at the calendar on the wall, and then he got up, crossed the kitchen, and flipped it.
For the first time since Eleanor died, to the right month. It was time.
Brett Holloway hit the bottom, as bottoms go, with a certain quiet thoroughness.
The divorce filing, when it came, contained everything Maddox had told the prosecutors and more, the 18 months of hidden accounts, the separate attorney, the exit plan.
Brett read, in cold legal prose, that his wife had been planning to discard him before the gala had even been booked.
The man who'd gone along his whole life because going along was easier finally arrived at the one fact too heavy to go along with, that the person he'd trusted enough to carry a forged document to his own father had never.
For one day of their marriage, been on his side. Something in Brett broke.
Today, my mother called you screaming because 30 days my mother called slowly something in Brett that.
He lost the Maple Hill house. He kept his medical license, he'd committed no crime.
He'd been a fool, and being a fool is not yet illegal, but the hospital politics that had once made him feel important curdled, and he took a leave, and for a while no one knew where he was.
Then, on a Tuesday in October, he showed up at the garage.
He stood in the doorway in jeans that were too new and shoes that were too clean, and he looked at his father, and he didn't make a speech, because the men in his family had a horror of speeches.
You said there was a broom, Brett said. Frank looked at him for a long moment. At the gauntness. At the new humility, fragile as a fresh weld.
He knew, he'd known for 30 years, that you can't tell whether a repair will hold by looking at it. You have to run the engine and see.
Pegboard, far wall, Frank said. Bay floor first, then the parts room. We don't pay for the first 90 days.
You're earning the right to be paid, not the pay.
After that we'll see if there's a man in there worth a wage. He picked up his own wrench and turned back to the car on the lift, and then...
Because he was a father and not only a judge, he added without turning around, "It's good to see you, son. Now sweep." Brett swept.
He was bad at it for a while. He'd never done honest manual work in his life, and his beautiful surgeon's hands blistered and complained.
Later, my mother called me screaming. Who, at every reason, sure, done him most great and watched her father learn to push a broom and felt something complicated.
He showed up before he was paid, which is the only test that has ever mattered. The test he'd failed for 20 years without knowing he was taking it, and was now blister by blister beginning to pass.
As for Melissa, the law took its slow course.
The forgery, the wire fraud, the bank fraud, Maddox's cooperation made the case airtight, and the airtight case made the sentence real.
She did not go to prison for the first lie. She went to prison, exactly as Raymond had predicted that first night on the curl cord phone.
For the lies she told after she thought she'd gotten away with the first one, and for the gala, 200 witnesses.
And a 4-foot-wide forensic comparison that no amount of presentation could make people unsee.
She wrote to Frank once, from a facility upstate. A long letter. Frank read it standing at the mailbox.
It contained, at last, no costume, no camel coat of language, no rehearsed warmth.
It was just a frightened, finally honest person asking whether forgiveness was possible.
Frank wrote back 2 lines, and he meant both of them. Forgiveness is between you and whatever you pray to.
It was never the thing standing between you and your old life. That was always just the truth, and you can't forge your way around it.
Days later, Mother Culture did not expect it to.
Reward and punishment in Frank Holloway's universe were not cruelty and they were not mercy.
They were simply the truth, paid out at last, to everyone, in exactly the amount they'd earned. A broom, Vayu. After all of that, a broom.
Poise. Do not cry yet, Corito, save your tears, you are going to need them. Water? Coffee? Both, then. Sit close.
We are nearly there, and the ending is gentler than you are afraid it will be. Cameron kept his promise. At the gala,
while his whole life detonated in front of 200 strangers, he sat at table 11 and held his sister's hand and did nothing.
Exactly as his grandfather had asked, and it was, he told Frank later, the hardest thing he'd ever done and also, somehow,
The thing that set him free. I kept wanting to stand up and stop it, Cameron said. They were at the garage.
It was becoming, for both grandchildren, the place you went when you needed to be the real version of yourself.
And then I realized I didn't want to stop it. I wanted it to be over. I'd wanted it to be over for years and I didn't have a word for it.
Watching it actually end was like when a sound you didn't know you'd been hearing finally stops.
He was 18 and lost in the particular way of a boy who'd been handed a future built entirely out of his parents' lies and had just watched it repossessed. He didn't know how to do anything.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because of 30. He'd been nursing disease that Hollow in his father and Frey.
What do I even do now, Grandpa? Cameron asked one day. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have a name that means anything good anymore.
I don't have anything. Frank handed him a shop rag and a carburetor in a coffee can full of degreaser.
You have your hands and your whole life, Frank said. That's what everybody starts with.
the trust fund kids just take longer to find out it's all they ever really had. He nodded at the carburetor. Clean that. Every passage.
When you can't see the brass shine back at you, you're not done.
And while you're doing it, I'll tell you the only thing your great-grandmother ever told me about money that turned out to be true.
Cameron started cleaning. What? She said money is a magnifying glass, Frank said. It doesn't change what you are.
It just makes more of it. Put it on a good man and you get more good. Put it on a hollow one and you get a bigger hole.
Your father wasn't ruined by being poor and he wasn't saved by being rich, he was just magnified, in the wrong direction.
By money he didn't earn, until there was nothing left of him but the going along. Frank watched the boy's hands.
Awkward and earnest in the degreaser. So before any magnifying glass ever goes near you again, you find out what you actually are.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because 30 and the only way to find that out is to mix it in.
And then, Frank said, if it turns out there's something good in you, and I suspect there is.
You kept a hard promise when it would have felt better to break it, and that's the whole ballgame.
Kid, then someday somebody might trust you with a magnifying glass. And you'll know what to do with it. Now I can't see the brass.
Keep cleaning. Cameron didn't inherit the empire.
He didn't expect to and Frank didn't offer, and that absence was its own kind of gift, the gift of a clean start with no door he hadn't earned the key to.
But he got a job at the shop alongside his father, the two of them sweeping and cleaning and slowly, clumsily, learning to make things.
A failed surgeon and a lost rich kid finding out, side by side, what they actually were when the magnifying glass was taken away.
It wasn't redemption. Redemption is a word for the end of a story, and theirs was just starting.
It was something humbler and more real, a beginning earned by hand, on honest ground.
Frank gave Charlie the empire in a lawyer's office on a Wednesday, the shares, the deeds, the patents, the structures, transferred into a new trust with her at the center and Raymond as the steady hand until she grew into it.
She signed where she was told and cried twice and asked 17 sharp questions that made even Raymond raise his eyebrows.
2 days later my mother called me screaming because the 30 kids go to college at Prickaloff.
Had chosen better than anyone but Eleanor had dared to hope. But that was the paperwork. The paperwork was never the inheritance.
Frank knew the difference, he'd spent his whole life knowing the difference, and he'd been waiting to teach it to her.
So on the Saturday after, he took her to the back bay of the garage, the one that had been locked her whole life, the one she'd assumed was just storage, and he rolled up the door.
Inside, under a fitted cover, was a car. He pulled the cover off. It was a 1965 Mustang.
Restored to a degree that made Charlie stop breathing, not restored like a museum piece, but restored like something loved.
Every part of it correct and warm and alive, the paint a deep oxblood red, the chrome holding the light.
She'd worked in this garage for years and never known it was here. This was your great-grandmother's, Frank said.
I bought it for Eleanor in 1966 with my first real money, not the company money, before any of that.
Just a young mechanic who'd saved up and wanted to give the prettiest girl in the county a reason to ride around with him. He ran his hand along the fender.
And his voice did the thing it almost never did. We drove this car to the courthouse to get married.
We drove it home from the hospital with your father Brett wrapped in a blanket in the front seat. No car seats then, God help us.
2 days later my mother called me screaming because 30 when she got sick near the end I drive her around on Sunday near yourself.
He looked at Charlie. After she died I couldn't drive it and I couldn't sell it, so I did the only thing I know how to do with grief.
I took it apart and put it back together. Every bolt. For 19 years, a little at a time, whenever I missed her too much to sleep. It's not really a car anymore, Charlie.
It's 19 years of an old man talking to his wife with his hands. He pressed the keys into her palm and closed her fingers around them.
It's yours now. The shop's yours. The whole empire's yours.
But this is the only part of it I built with love instead of money, and that's why it's the part that matters.
Your grandmother said in her letter to keep the shop, because the rest is just the shadow the shop casts. This car is the same thing.
Everything else I'm giving you is the shadow. This is the light. Charlie couldn't speak.
She held the keys and looked at the oxblood Mustang and at her grandfather's ruined, beautiful oil-stained hands. Have you seen his hands?
Melissa had said, as if it were the worst thing about him, when it was the best, and she understood, finally and completely.
The whole architecture of the man and the family and the long quiet war he'd fought to protect exactly this moment. Pop pop, she managed.
I don't know how to be worth all this. You already are, Frank said. That's the only reason you're getting it.
2 days later my mother called me screaming because the 30 you start trying dessert as the days I just lose it so don't.
Now, you want to learn what she sounds like when she's running right. They got in. Charlie turned the key.
The engine Frank had rebuilt across 19 sleepless years of grief caught on the first try and settled into a low, even.
Perfect idle, the sound of something broken made whole by patient hands.
Which is the only kind of wholeness Frank Holloway had ever believed in. They drove with the windows down.
An old man and the granddaughter who'd earned an empire, in a dead woman's oxblood Mustang.
Past the Route 9 land that no one would ever take, past the brick house on Delancey Street.
Through a town that had no idea the gardener owned half of it, and never needed to know.
Eleanor's calendar, back in the kitchen, was turned to the right month at last. That car. Every time, That car undoes me.
Let me dry my eyes, you dry yours too, there is no shame in it. Almost done now, meu bem.
Are you still here with Dona Cláudia, all the way to the end? Of course you are. Come. 2 more, and then I will let you sleep.
Word gets around. Within a few months of the transfer, the relevant rooms knew that Holloway Industries, $60-some million.
Or, and 2 days later, my mother called me, said 40 patents, a controlling stake at a bands of a 20.
Improbably, out of a one-bay garage on the edge of town. And of course they came for her. They always come for the one they think is soft.
His name was Garrett Pell, and he ran a private equity outfit that specialized in exactly the situation it believed Charlie to be, a young, grieving, inexperienced heir sitting on assets she couldn't possibly understand.
He arranged an introduction. He took her to a steakhouse with white tablecloths and ordered for both of them without asking.
And he explained, with the gentle condescension of a man who has decided the person across the table is a child,
that managing a company like Holloway Industries was enormously complex, that a girl her age shouldn't have the weight of it.
That his firm could take the operational burden off her hands, a management agreement here, a few board seats there.
Nothing she'd even notice, so she could go back to being a student. You've been through so much, Garrett said warmly.
Let the grown-ups carry this for a while. Charlie listened.
She let him talk for a long time, the way her grandfather had once let Melissa narrate her own cleverness across a studio.
She asked a few dumb questions on purpose and watched him relax by degrees, watched the contempt settle behind his eyes, watched him decide she was exactly as small as he needed her to be.
She'd learned from the best.
Later, mother called me screaming because the streaming has the third position from which to one where.
Pell, she said when he finally ran down. Can I tell you about a Part 1 design last semester?
It's a tolerance ring for a transmission bearing. Boring little thing.
But here's what I learned making it, the whole assembly only fails in one place, and it's never the place that looks weakest.
It's the place that thinks it's load-bearing and isn't. She smiled, and it was Frank's smile, and Eleanor's jaw underneath it.
Your management agreement has a clause on page 19 that quietly assigns my voting proxy to your firm for 7 years. The few board seats are a majority.
And the operational fee is structured so that within 4 years your firm would have extracted more than the company earns.
You didn't come to take the burden off my hands, Mr. Pell.
You came to do to me what a man named Trevor Maddox tried to do to my family 8 months ago.
The difference is that you did your homework on my age and skipped the part where you find out who taught me.
Garrett Pell's expression froze into the exact same emotional collapse Frank had witnessed on Maddox's face, the same thing Melissa's face had done in the empty ballroom.
The slow, dawning, far too late understanding. I own a bank, Mr. Pell, Charlie said, signaling for the check, which she paid. I'm 20.
2 days later, my mother called me screaming because the third day I have 40 was get better to need the steak.
Don't call me again. She told Frank about it that night at the garage, trying to be casual and failing, glowing with it.
Frank listened to the whole thing without a word, and when she finished he set down his wrench and looked at her for a long moment, and then he did something she'd only seen him do twice in her life.
His eyes filled. What? She said. Pop, what? Nothing. He cleared his throat and picked the wrench back up.
Your grandmother would have liked the bit about page 19, that's all. She always said the trap isn't the part that looks strong.
It's the part that thinks it's load-bearing and isn't. He bent back over the engine so she couldn't see his face, because the face is the last fortress and he'd surrendered it exactly twice in his life and wasn't ready for a third.
You're going to be just fine, kid. Better than fine. Now hand me the 10mm and stop interrogating your elders.
She laughed, the exact laugh, and handed him the 10mm.
A little over a year after the night she was handed $50 in an empty ballroom, here is what the family Frank Holloway rebuilt looked like, for anyone keeping a ledger, and Frank was always keeping a ledger.
Holloway Industries was thriving.
Run by a young woman who'd kept the headquarters in the original one-bay garage out of stubbornness and sentiment and a deep correct instinct that the day she moved the company into a glass tower was the day it would start to forget what it was.
There was a real office now, downtown, with real people in it, but the chairman's desk was a workbench, and the chairman took meetings in a coverall.
So later, my mother called 2 days later. My mother calls me because of 30 and more than one private. The calls on page 19 left after dealing with.
Brett swept the bay for 90 days without pay and then, on the 91st, found an envelope with a modest check and a note in his father's blocky hand. Earned.
Dad. He framed the note. He was 45 and learning, late and clumsily and for real, to make things with his hands.
He would never be a great mechanic, but he showed up before he was paid every single day, which Frank had decided long ago was the only test that ever mattered, and which his son was, at last, passing.
Cameron got into a trade program, paid for it himself with shop wages and a scholarship he earned without the family name, and discovered he was really good at the patient, honest work of fixing what's broken.
He kept the carburetor Frank had made him clean, the first one, shined to a brass mirror, on a shelf in his apartment, where most young men keep trophies.
Melissa served her sentence. The family did not speak of her, not out of cruelty but because there was nothing left to say.
The truth had been paid out in the exact amount earned, and the ledger, once balanced, has no further entries.
Trevor Maddox went away for considerably longer. Garrett Pell found easier targets.
The men who measured a person by their hands had all, one by one, met the wrong pair of hands. And Frank Holloway, 72 now, a little slower.
Drove his prayer-held truck to the garage every morning and ate lunch from Eleanor's steel lunchbox and worked beside his granddaughter and his recovering son and his earnest grandson.
In a shop that was secretly the head of an empire and openly the heart of a family, on 11 acres of ground that no one would ever take.
Earned my budget away 2 days later. Mother called me screaming because 30 and low by the parts counter and a cheap frame shot I bought him at his store.
Customers asked about it sometimes. Frank told them it was the most valuable thing he owned. That little card, they'd say.
That little card, he'd agree, is what somebody handed me the day they decided I was finished. I keep it where I can see it.
Reminds me of the most important thing my wife ever taught me. And if the customer waited, most didn't.
The ones who did tended to come back. Frank would set down his wrench and tell them, "People will tell you who you are. That's the lie. Nobody else gets to write that down."
You write it, every day, with what you make and how honest you are while you're making it, and you keep writing it long after the people who underestimated you have stopped paying attention. He'd nod at the card.
They thought the empire was the money. It was never the money.
The money's just the shadow. He'd nod. Then, at the garage, the lift, the pegboard, the workbench, the granddaughter with her head inside an engine and her great-grandmother's oxblood Mustang gleaming in the back bay.
This is the empire. The work. The hands. The people who earned their place in it.
The rest is just what the work casts on the wall when the light's behind it. Then he'd pick his wrench back up.
Because there was always another engine, and an old man only gets so many mornings to put broken things back together.
And Frank Holloway did not intend to waste a single one of them telling stories when he could be building the only kind of wealth he'd ever truly believed in.
Days later, my mother called me started. And now at last you're in them.
The whole of it, exactly as it was told to me. You stayed the entire night.
Dona Cláudia knew you would, the moment you sat down in that chair. Finish your coffee.
And when someone asks you where you heard the story of the mechanic's empire, you tell them an old woman on this street told it to you true.
Now go well, and come back when the nights grow long again.